In this presentation, we will make an alternative worksheet, one that has debit and credit columns broken out for each section within Excel. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here we are in Excel. We're currently at 150%. We're now going to take a look at a different type of worksheet where we're going to break out the debits and credits for each side so we can see the pros and cons of it. This would be the more traditional look of the worksheet, and so we want to be able to compare and contrast if we're in a situation where we have to use this type of worksheet that has the more columns. Then we want to be able to know how to do so, and we can think about how to construct it so that we can see how it's built. So what we will do then is copy this over. This is our completed worksheet. We're going to copy it by holding down Control, left clicking on this tab, and then dragging it over, and that'll copy the entire tab. So now we have a copy of our worksheet, and we can make adjustments to it. This is what we've created. What we have so far is a unadjusted trial balance, which has a debits and credits in the same column, then adjustments with debits and credits in the same column, then the adjusted trial balance with debits and credits in the same column, tax, and tax trial balance. So how many columns is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which all need debit and credits, which means if we do that traditionally, we would have 10 columns. So let's just see what that would look like. So what we'll do is we'll just add another column for each of these items. So for the unadjusted trial balance, I'm going to put my cursor on O. We've got the whole column selected. We'll then right click on it and we're going to go to Insert. So we're going to insert more information in there. And now what we're going to do is take all the credits and pull them over to this side. So I'm going to go through back here and take all these credits and I'm just going to highlight them. We're going to pull them over to this side. So I'll scroll down here. We're going to highlight these items, pull them over by putting my cursor on that section and pulling it over to this side. Scrolling back down, any credit we're going to pull over. So there we have this. Credit, we'll pull that over. Credit, we'll pull that over. And now what I'm going to do is copy the formula down. So we have debits and credits. So we'll copy this formula down and say, okay, so now the debits equal the credits. However, we want to make all the credits now not be negative because we don't want them to be negative anymore. So I'm going to double click on each one of them and delete the negative sign. So we'll just go through here. We no longer have negative signs to represent the credits. We just have them in the credit side. So all credit balances, we're just going to go down here and delete the negative sign. And I'll keep doing this and you could finish this off. So now I've completed that task, which was great, excellent fun, and we have the debits and the credits in balance now because the debits equal the credits. Now obviously this conditional formatting doesn't help us now. So the conditional formatting for all of these cells, I'm just going to select them. We're going to go to the Home tab, Style, Conditional Formatting, and we're going to go ahead and remove the conditional formatting. Clear rules for the selected cells. So now we just know we're in balance because the two are the same. And we'll do the same for all of these now. So we're going to go back up top. I'm going to add another, we got this cell here. I need the debits and the credits. So I'm going to put my cursor up top, right click, and insert. So we insert for the entire column. I'm just going to delete all the journal entries for now, and we'll take a look at an example of how to post a couple of them. So I've changed some of mine here, but all the blue items, everything in blue, we're just going to delete these. And then let's go ahead and just delete the tax ones as well. So you're going to have some red ones. Mine are all blue because I changed the sign. So we'll just delete these for now, and we'll give an example of posting a couple of them in a different worksheet. So now we've got the debit and the credit column here. When we post our information, we're going to have to go through all of our accounts, and I've taken a look at some of these, and remove the credit side, meaning the negative number for the credits. And that's what I've done here. So you can just go through each one of them and delete the sign. Although if you do that, be careful over here, of course, because if you have a negative sum formula, then you got to make sure that you put in the correct number here as you make an adjustment. But we'll just take a look at an example later. So that's going to be our debit and credit column for the adjustments. And then we would need a debit and credit column for the adjusted trial balance. So remember, over here, we just summed up the information. But now we're going to need a debit and credit column. So I'm going to highlight this, going to right click, and we're going to insert. So once again, inserting another column right next to here. We're going to have a debit and credit side of it. And now I'm just going to delete these because we're going to have to enter a different formula. Meaning I can't just pull these over because these are a formula, and what I need it to do is pick up this and come up with the proper formula over here. So I'm just going to delete this for now, and we'll enter in an adjusted formula. This is where it gets kind of confusing because it's possible for some accounts to flip from debits to credit. In other words, I'm pretty sure that the asset accounts will all have debit balances at the end of the day, but it's possible, for example, the cash account to be overdrawn, in which case it would flip to a credit. Now, do I need to go over here and enter something on the credit side in case that happens? I hope, I'm going to say no. I'm going to use simple formulas right now and not do that. But just note that's, one of the problems you have. You get the formulas are kind of not perfect. It's not going to work all the time. And if you use really complex formulas, then you got to use, complex formulas. So now we're going to say that we could say this equals the sum, or I'm sorry, equals the beginning balance, which is a debit on the assets. And then we're going to say plus the debits on the adjustments minus the credits on the adjustments. So that's the type of formula we would need for any debit normal balance account in the debit side of the trial balance. So we'll say enter that. And we could just put, just to see if we can, we'll say this is a debit, this is a credit, just so we can kind of keep this straight. Maybe we'll add the dates back in later, but here's a credit, and we'll keep going on that. So debits, credits, debits, credits, debits, credits, debits, credits, a lot of them. Okay, so now we've got this. We'll copy this down, and that goes down to here. Now, accumulated depreciation is a credit balance account, so now I got to flip over here and say that this accumulated depreciation should probably be a 0 on this side, although it's 0, so it doesn't matter. But we're going to say this equals that minus the debit plus the credit, and then we'd have to copy that all the way down to the liabilities. And then we've got the credit for these liabilities will be the same for equity, so I could just copy this down. And this should actually be a credit side, so we'll pull that over even though it's 0. So let's copy this down again. Just I messed that up. And then the draws is a debit, so then we'd have to go back to the debit, would be this plus this minus this. I hope I got these right. I think I do. There's that. And then the owner's equity is going to be a credit again, so that's going to be equal to this minus the debit plus the credit. And then the revenue, these are all credit balances, so I'm just going to copy that down. And then the expenses are going to be debit balances, so we got to say it's going to be the debit plus the debit minus the credit. And then we can copy that down. So we'd copy this all the way down. And then we've got rent. Now this one obviously was recorded wrong, so that's kind of an issue for us. It's a credit right now, but we expect it to be flipped to a debit because it was recorded in the wrong place. So this is where this worksheet, if I use simple formulas, kind of gets messed up. I mean, right now, it's a credit, and then we're going to have to subtract the debit plus the credit. But really, at the end of the day, that's going to go to 0. So, and it should kind of be a debit. So again, kind of the problem with this worksheet. We could use complex formulas, but then we would need a formula in each cell in order to do this instead of having only formulas in the cells that are typically used. So then the telephone company, we're going to say is this plus the debit minus the credit. And we'll say that goes down. And then this one, I could copy this formula. And I'll put it there, and I'll put it there. And then the loss on the sale of the equipment, we will copy this formula and put it there. And then these are all debits, so I can copy this formula and put it there. And so that that should work. Hopefully I did all that correctly, but you could just see that it's a little bit more complex to use, the simple formulas in order to do that. Then if we sum this up, there's the debits, there's the credits, debits and credits are equal, and you could kind of test this out. If I debit this account 1,000, there we go. If we credit this one 1,000, it should go down, right? And so we could see how to kind of test that out. And then we'd have to do the same thing for the taxes. We'd have to do the same thing. Now we got the tax trial balance, which is over here. This is the adjusted trial balance. Now we've got the tax adjustments. So I'm going to put my cursor on U, right click and insert. And now we've got a debit and a credit side. And then we've got the tax trial balance, the ending trial balance, where I'd have to add a row. I'm going to add a row just to get the formatting. So I'll put my cursor on W, right click, insert, and that'll automatically kind of pull the formatting from the left side. And now we got to do the same thing. I'm gonna delete this, and we'll just pull that information over. I'm gonna format this by going to the Home tab, Paintbrush, and we'll format paint this over here. And then we'll go through the same process. And we'll say, okay, this is our balances. So I can basically just copy these formulas, take this whole thing, and copy those formulas and paste them right here, right click, and paste the whole thing, the formulas. And so then if I take a look at this, looks like it's doing the right thing. So we have this, and then we would want to sum this up. I'm going to say sum this. So debits and credits. We'd have to do the same thing here. I'm going to pull this over, debits and credits. And we could pull this over, debits and credits. So here's what we have. And so you can see kind of how more complicated that type of entry, what it looks like here. I'm going to add my grid lines back in. So we'll say grid lines, this whole thing. Now, if we were to enter, say, a journal entry to something like this, say we entered this first journal entry, note what you'd have to do. We got to go to rent expense. Rent expense was here, and that's that kind of funny one that we had. So we'd be on the debit side, and we're going to scroll back up and pick up the rent expense, and the other one was rent income. So now we can see we're out of balance here, and then we go up to rent income, which I think was this item. On the credit side equals, and we'll pick up the income. So now we can see in the terms of the totals, the debits and credits started in balance, then we had a debit credit balance entry, and the ending balance remains in balance. If I want to calculate net income from this, then again, I can't just sum up the cells. I'd have to say equals the sum of like the credits on the income statement down, which are basically all of these. And then I'll close the brackets. Minus the sum of the debits, right? All the debits, which are all the expenses on the income statement on down. And then close that up. And there we have it. So I think that's right. So, all right. So then we got that, and we'll copy that. Let's just double check it to our tab over here. We scroll back down. 53,310. 53,310 with rounding. So, okay, so we'll copy that. Put that same thing here, 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 here. And so we got that same formula all the way across. So that's kind of the way we could do this. Now you could still do the kind of check figures in this worksheet. You could say, well, if this minus this is 0, then you're good. You could do the same conditional formatting, similar at least. You can say highlight if it's greater than 1. We want it to be red. If it's highlight and less than -1, we want it to be red. And if it's between, we'll say if it's between -1 and 1, we want it to be green. And so you could do that same formula and give that kind of visual check there. So if anything, if this goes off like that, or by 2, then it would be out of balance. So you can use a lot of the same formulas, but you could just see how much more space it takes just in terms of rows, and the calculations on it that we got to put in there are going to be a little bit, the formulas we use, in other words, are going to be a little bit more complex to get the ending balance, and the formulas for things like net income and whatnot are a little bit more complex, not too bad to do. So this is the kind of the alternative that you might see, might be working with within Excel or some other kind of program. It might be formatted in this format. And this is just a quick overview of what that format could look like. We might clean it up a little bit for an example for you at a later time. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.